There comes a moment in every Sigma empath's life when the version that once absorbed everything, the pain, the disappointment, the betrayal, finally dies. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in clarity. This is the moment of evolution, when the wounded empath realizes they are no longer defined by the hurt they carried. Slowly, silently, they rise into a version of themselves no one expected. Untouchable. The person who once tolerated emotional chaos now protects their peace with unbreakable boundaries. The one who once loved without limits now loves with wisdom. The one who once broke silently now rebuilds loudly inside their soul. This transformation is not loud, it's sacred. People who knew the wounded version often don't recognize the evolved one. They expect the same softness without strength, the same forgiveness without boundaries, the same love without discernment. But that era is over. The Sigma empath who emerges from deep healing carries an aura that feels different, calmer, sharper, harder to access, impossible to manipulate. They no longer explain themselves to people committed to misunderstanding them. They no longer give chances to those who only take. They no longer shrink their intuition to protect someone else's comfort. Their final evolution is marked by one truth: they are no longer available to the energy that once wounded them. Before we go deeper, I want to ask you something from the heart. Do you feel like you're in your evolution era, rising into a version of yourself no one expected? Tell me in the comments. Your story will resonate with someone who needs it. And if this message felt like it spoke directly to your soul, make sure you subscribe to Brainy Empath. This channel is where your evolution is seen, understood, and honored. If you reach the end, type Untouchable so I know you're one of the Sigma empaths stepping into their final form. They stop absorbing pain and start enforcing boundaries that protect their soul. Sigma empaths spend a long chapter of their life absorbing pain that was never theirs to carry. They take on the emotions of others, soften the blows meant for someone else, and hold space for people who would never do the same for them. They mistake endurance for love, self-sacrifice for connection, and emotional labor for loyalty. But eventually, a moment arrives, a breaking point that isn't loud but life-changing. It's the moment their soul whispers, "No more." And from that moment on, something shifts permanently. They no longer absorb every wound thrown their way. They stop letting people spill their chaos into them. They stop accepting pain as part of loving. Instead, they begin enforcing boundaries that guard their peace like a sacred flame. This shift doesn't happen out of anger. It happens out of awakening. The Sigma empath finally realizes that absorbing pain doesn't heal anyone. It only destroys them slowly. They recognize how many years they spent carrying burdens that were never theirs, playing the emotional anchor for people who never learned to stand on their own, becoming a safe harbor for storms that were never meant to reach their shores. And with this realization comes a powerful transformation. They start saying no. Soft no's at first, then firm no's that shock the very people who once depended on their openness. Their boundaries rise not as walls, but as gates. Selective, intentional, protective. Their heart remains open, but their access becomes limited. As their boundaries strengthen, something incredible happens. The Sigma empath's spirit begins to heal. The emotional exhaustion that once felt normal starts to lift. The relationships that drained them reveal their true nature and fall away. The people who loved them only for their generosity fade out of their life, exposed by the new standards they can no longer meet. And in this clearing, the Sigma empath discovers a peace they didn't know they were allowed to have. Their empathy becomes healthier. Their intuition becomes clearer. Their heart beats for them first, not for the world that once consumed them. By the time this evolution is complete, they become almost unrecognizable to their past self. The person who once absorbed pain without question is gone. The version who tolerated disrespect in the name of understanding no longer exists. In their place stands someone powerful, grounded, and balanced, a Sigma empath who protects their soul with boundaries sharper than any betrayal they've survived. They still feel deeply, but they no longer drown. They still care, but they no longer carry. And that shift marks the beginning of their final evolution into someone truly untouchable. Their intuition becomes razor sharp, making them impossible to deceive again. Sigma empaths may have once overlooked red flags, trusted the wrong people, or ignored the quiet warnings in their chest. But that version of them does not survive the final evolution. Every betrayal, every lie, every disappointment becomes a sharpening stone for their intuition. What was once a quiet whisper becomes a clear, undeniable voice. What once felt like a subtle tug becomes a full-body knowing. Their intuition evolves from a soft suggestion to a razor-sharp instrument that cuts straight through illusion, charm, and manipulation. People who once fooled them can no longer get past the first sentence. People who once hid behind sweet words now stand exposed by the energy they give off. And in this new state, the Sigma empath becomes nearly impossible to deceive because they finally trust what they always felt. This razor-sharp intuition isn't just about sensing danger, it's about seeing people's truth before they reveal it. They can feel dishonesty in the pauses between words, detect insecurity behind arrogance, and sense emotional instability long before it erupts. They no longer get swept up in appearances or seduced by potential. Their mind observes, their heart listens, and their intuition evaluates everything with precision. They watch for inconsistencies in actions. They feel when connection shifts. They notice when someone's intentions don't match their words. And instead of giving endless chances, they now take one step back, quietly, calmly, confidently. The moment something feels off, experience has taught them this. Intuition is never wrong, only ignored. As their intuition strengthens, their connections transform. The people who once drained them cannot enter their life anymore. They don't even make it past the door. Manipulators feel uncomfortable around them. Deceivers sense they can't get away with their usual games. Energy vampires lose interest when they realize the empath is no longer accessible. Instead, the Sigma empath begins attracting people who match their growth, those who are honest, grounded, emotionally aware, and genuine. Their evolution filters their world effortlessly without conflict or confrontation. Their intuition does the work for them, guiding them toward alignment and away from harm with almost supernatural accuracy. By the time they reach this stage, they have become a version of themselves the past could never break again. Their intuition is a shield, a compass, and a form of inner wisdom that protects them in every direction. They no longer question themselves, they trust themselves, they no longer explain their instincts, they follow them. And they no longer fall for the kind of people who once wounded them. Their intuition has become so sharp, so refined, so intensely tuned that deception simply cannot survive in their presence. In their final evolution, the Sigma empath becomes untouchable, not because they are hardened, but because they are awakened, and nothing slips past an awakened heart. They replace people-pleasing with self-respect and emotional independence. There comes a point in a Sigma empath's evolution when they finally see the truth. People-pleasing was never kindness. It was self-abandonment, disguised as compassion. For years, they bent to keep the peace, softened themselves to avoid disappointing others, and gave more than they received because they thought love required sacrifice. But eventually, the weight of doing everything for everyone while receiving so little back becomes unbearable. And in that moment of realization, something powerful shifts. They stop molding themselves to fit the expectations of others and begin honoring their own emotional reality. People-pleasing dies, and in its place rises a new force: self-respect, fierce and uncompromising. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It begins quietly. The Sigma empath saying no without apologizing, choosing rest over obligation, and refusing to shrink their needs to keep someone else comfortable. They start recognizing the difference between being helpful and being used. They notice who only values them when they're giving and who stays when the giving stops. They realize that love does not require exhaustion, loyalty does not require self-sacrifice, and kindness is not measured by how much of themselves they can give away. With this awareness comes emotional independence, the ability to stand on their own emotional feet without relying on approval, validation, or acceptance from anyone else. As they rise into this independence, the world around them shifts. The people who were drawn to their endless giving pull away when they can no longer drain them. The ones who loved the version of them that never set boundaries start to feel threatened by this new strength. And the Sigma empath once terrified of losing people, discover something liberating. Anyone who leaves because you respect yourself was never meant to stay. Their circle shrinks, but their peace expands. Their heart becomes lighter, not because fewer people are in it, but because the right people are finally allowed in. Self-respect becomes their filter, a quiet force that protects their spirit better than any armor ever could. With emotional independence comes a confidence the world rarely expects from someone so sensitive. They no longer need validation to feel secure. They no longer chase love. They attract it by being whole. They no longer fear being alone because solitude has become a place of power, not emptiness. The Sigma Empath who once gave endlessly now gives intentionally. The one who once accepted crumbs now expects reciprocity. The one who once felt guilty for having needs now honors them unapologetically. And through this shift, they evolve into someone impossible to manipulate, drain, or break. Their self-respect becomes their final shield, and their emotional independence becomes the foundation of their untouchable identity. Their healing creates a version of them who no longer chases, begs, or explains. The most powerful moment in a Sigma Empath's evolution is the moment they realize they don't have to chase anyone to be valued. They don't have to beg for clarity, attention, respect, or effort. They don't have to explain their worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding it. Their healing strips away every belief that once kept them small, the belief that love must be earned, that loyalty must be proven, that connection must be fought for. As they rise, they understand something life-changing. The right people meet you where you are, and the wrong ones fall away when they can no longer feed on your softness. This awareness births a version of them who moves differently, calmer, clearer, and no longer tied to the emotional chaos of others. This transformation begins in silence during the moments when the Sigma Empath finally sits with their deepest wounds and realizes how much of their life they spent chasing what never chased them back. They look at the situations where they overgave, the relationships where they overexplained, the people they held on to long after those people stopped holding on to them, and instead of blaming themselves, they begin to understand the pattern. They were trying to heal others so they wouldn't have to face losing them. Healing forces them to confront the truth. You cannot save someone who benefits from watching you drown, and you cannot keep someone who is never willing to stay. This realization breaks the chains of emotional dependency that kept them running after people who only walked away. As this inner wisdom grows, their behavior transforms. They stop chasing love and start attracting it by embodying peace. They stop begging for effort and start expecting reciprocity. They stop explaining their feelings to people who have no intention of listening. When someone pulls away, they let them go. When someone disrespects them, they detach. When someone offers inconsistency, they step back without hesitation. They no longer need closure from the person who hurt them. The closure comes from recognizing that losing them was the blessing that freed their spirit. For the first time, their energy is protected, their boundaries are firm, and their heart no longer leaks for people who never deserved its warmth. This healed version of the Sigma Empath is powerful in a way the old version could never be. They move with self-respect, not desperation. They connect with intention, not fear. They love without losing themselves, and because they no longer chase, beg, or explain, they become someone others are drawn to, not out of need, but out of admiration. Their healing makes them untouchable, not because they are unreachable, but because they finally know their worth. And once a Sigma Empath reaches this level of evolution, no one can ever pull them back into the places they fought so hard to rise from. They transform past wounds into wisdom that guides every future choice. Sigma Empaths carry the kind of wounds that could have destroyed them. Heartbreaks that hollowed out their chest, betrayals that cut deeper than words, disappointments that made them question their worth. But instead of letting these wounds define them, they use them as lanterns. Every scar becomes a lesson, every painful memory becomes a direction, every emotional blow becomes a compass that points them toward who they must never be again and who they are now becoming. They don't bury their wounds or pretend they never felt them. They study them, honor them, and extract the wisdom hidden inside each one. Their past pain becomes their future protection. Their old heartbreak becomes their new intuition. Their former suffering becomes their present strength. This transformation unfolds quietly over time. While others run from their pain, the Sigma Empath sits with it, not to suffer, but to understand. They replay the moments where they ignored their instincts, the times they stayed too long, the situations where they settled for less. Instead of regretting these choices, they treat them as teachers. They realize that every wound was a message. You deserved better. You deserved honesty. You deserved reciprocity. You deserve peace. These realizations harden into wisdom that shapes every decision they make going forward. They no longer tolerate subtle disrespect. They no longer excuse inconsistent behavior. They no longer open their heart to anyone who cannot hold it with care. Their past becomes their armor, not to shut the world out, but to protect the soul they had once given too freely. And as this wisdom deepens, their life begins to shift. They choose friends who match their emotional depth. They choose partners who show up with effort, not excuses. They choose environments where their energy grows rather than drains. They no longer chase potential. They respond to patterns. They no longer believe in promises. They believe in actions. They no longer gamble their heart. They invest it wisely, intentionally, and only where it can thrive. Every decision becomes grounded in a clarity born from the pain they once endured. Their choices become smarter, healthier, and aligned with who they truly are. By the time the Sigma Empath reaches this stage, they have evolved into someone unrecognizable to their past self. The person who once broke easily now bends without shattering. The one who once trusted blindly now sees with profound clarity. The one who once gave endlessly now gives with purpose. Their past wounds no longer hurt, they guide. They no longer bleed, they illuminate. And this is what makes them untouchable. They do not fear pain anymore because they know how to turn it into power. Their wisdom becomes their shield, their intuition becomes their roadmap, and their soul becomes a place where no past wound can harm them again. Their energy becomes selective. Access must be earned, not assumed. There comes a moment in a Sigma Empath's evolution when they realize their energy is not infinite, and it was never meant to be freely available to everyone. For years, they allowed people into their inner world simply because they cared, because empathy made them open their doors wide, even to those who brought chaos instead of peace. But once they evolve, once they heal, once they rise from everything that tried to break them, something inside them changes permanently. Their energy becomes selective, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. Access to them is no longer a right, it becomes a privilege that must be earned through consistency, honesty, and intention. This shift happens when the Sigma Empath finally understands how much of themselves they gave away to people who didn't value it. They remember the nights they stayed up comforting someone who never checked on them, the relationships where they poured out emotional support only to receive silence in return, the moments they allowed someone close who did nothing but take, drain, and demand. And with that realization comes a powerful truth. Not everyone deserves access to their heart. As this truth settles into their bones, their boundaries transform. They no longer entertain half-hearted people. They no longer accept the bare minimum. They no longer let someone's potential blind them to their patterns. Their energy becomes a sacred currency, and they protect it with the kind of clarity that only self-awareness can create. As their energy becomes selective, their circle becomes smaller, but far more meaningful. The people who once took advantage quietly disappear when they can no longer extract anything. The ones who were only present during the empath's giving phase suddenly find themselves locked out. And for the first time, the Sigma Empath feels no guilt about it. They don't apologize for choosing peace. They don't feel bad for walking away from inconsistency. They don't explain why access has been revoked. Their silence speaks the message clearly. If you want space in my life, show me you deserve it. Their vibe shifts from I will help you no matter what to I honor myself first. And with that shift, the energy around them transforms completely. This new level of selectiveness does not make them cold, it makes them untouchable. No manipulator can get close. No fake friend can infiltrate their peace. No romantic interest with unclear intentions can slip through the cracks. Their intuition screens people before their heart ever gets involved. Their boundaries guard their emotional home like unbreakable steel. Their presence becomes something others notice, admire, and respect because it is rare, elevated, and no longer accessible to just anyone. When a Sigma empath reaches this level, they stop being drained, disappointed, or betrayed. They rise into a state where only genuine, reciprocal, emotionally mature connections survive. Their energy becomes a sanctuary, and only those who come with truth, effort, and respect are allowed through the door. They rise into a calm, powerful state where nothing external can shake their inner peace. The final evolution of a Sigma empath is not loud, dramatic, or attention-seeking. It is quiet, steady, and deeply rooted. They reach a point where the world no longer has the power to destabilize them. The opinions of others lose their sting. The actions of the unpredictable no longer rattle their spirit. The emotional storms that once shook them now pass through without leaving scars. They rise into a state of inner peace, so solid that nothing external can break it. This is not numbness, it is mastery. It is the moment when the Sigma empath realizes that true power is not in controlling the world around them, but in controlling the world within themselves. Their calmness becomes their shield, their clarity becomes their weapon, and their peace becomes their greatest strength. This evolution comes after they've endured everything that was meant to destroy them: the heartbreak, the betrayal, the manipulation, the exhaustion of giving too much. They've already lived through the chaos. They've already survived the breaking. And through that journey, they discovered the one thing no one can take from them: their ability to return to themselves. They learn that peace is a choice, that their energy is sacred, that their intuition knows before their mind understands. They stop reacting to everything that once triggered them. They stop explaining themselves to people who don't listen. They stop investing in battles that don't align with their spirit. Their silence becomes intentional, their boundaries become effortless, and their presence carries a gravity that makes others feel their power without them saying a word. As they rise into this calm, powerful state, their life transforms. Toxic people lose access because chaos cannot coexist with peace. Manipulators retreat because control cannot touch someone who no longer reacts. Emotional vampires drift away because they cannot feed on someone who isn't leaking energy. People who once underestimated them now feel intimidated by the very peace they tried to shatter. And the Sigma empath, instead of feeling guilty or alone, feels whole, more whole than they have ever been. Their inner world becomes a sanctuary where they make decisions with clarity, give love with discernment, and move through life with a confidence born from survival, not ego. This is what makes them truly untouchable. Not that nothing hurts them, but that nothing controls them. Not that they avoid emotion, but that they master it. Not that they stop feeling deeply, but that they stop losing themselves in what they feel. Their peace becomes an unshakable foundation, a place where no betrayal can reach, no disappointment can break, no chaos can enter. And once a Sigma empath rises into this state, they evolve into the most powerful version of themselves: calm, awakened, grounded, and quietly unstoppable. If you've ever felt yourself shifting away from the version of you that carried too much, cared too deeply, and broke too quietly, then you already know you're stepping into your final evolution. You are no longer the wounded empath who absorbed everyone's chaos. You are the awakened one, the one who sees clearly, chooses wisely, and protects your peace like something sacred. You rise not because life got easier, but because you got stronger, wiser, calmer, and more aligned with who you were always meant to be. And the people who once underestimated your softness now stand in the shadow of a strength they never saw coming. Before you go, I want to ask you something honest. Do you feel like you're entering the untouchable version of yourself, the version built from everything you survived? Share your answer in the comments. Your journey might inspire someone who's still in their healing phase. And if this message spoke directly to your soul, make sure you subscribe to Brainy Empath. This channel is where your growth, your evolution, and your power are finally understood. If you watched until the very end, type final form, so I know you're one of the Sigma empaths stepping fully into their untouchable era.